As a leader, you're expected to make high stakes decisions. But what happens when you're not an expert in the topic at hand? Welcome to What Leaders Need to Know, the show that helps you uncover hidden blind spots, ask the right questions, and think like an expert without becoming one. I'm Todd Genatasio, and in every episode, I bring you world-class expertise to simplify complex topics, break down decision-making frameworks, and give you the clarity that you need to lead with confidence. Today's guest is an old friend of mine, Jamey Mroz, a former NFL coach turned executive leadership consultant. We've been connected for a bunch of years now because I love following the stuff he puts out on Instagram and all the work he's doing around leadership and mindset. He specializes in transforming team mindset, culture, and performance by bridging the gap between elite sports and business. With his firm, Mroz Mission, he works with organizations of all sizes to unlock potential, accelerate change, and develop high-performing teams from the inside out. I'm excited to dive into all the different types of mindset topics around leadership and the parallels with sports with Jamey. Jamey, welcome to the show.
Man, that was one heck of an intro. I was like, is this pre-recorded? This is amazing. Listening in real time. That's unbelievable.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Oh, thanks for being here, man. I'd love to hear, give us a little background about like how you got started and ended up like in the leadership and executive coaching stuff, because you've got a great background and I love the experience you bring to that part of the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. So my background, it really runs. I always like to say it was kind of selfish. So I was a football player, kind of undersized, small town in northern Massachusetts. Like not a lot of guys come out of Massachusetts. So I was constantly trying to figure out ways to get better. How do I help myself get better? And it started with, studying kinesiology in the body and, how to run faster, become stronger, all those things. Well, the next progression for that was psychology, right? I mean, we've always heard it a million times. A person might look like a star. They have all the intangibles, but for some reason they just can't put it together. And it's funny because if you ask people, hey, what percentage of your job or your success is mental versus physical in athletics, like 90% mental, right? It's all mental. But then when you actually step back and look at what we work all physical stuff, we very rarely, and it's starting to shift now, but very rarely, especially when I was coming up, there was 0% mental training. So for me, it was like, all right, that's an opportunity. I can get better there. And how can I maybe avoid some mistakes, some family history, family trends, right? How can I avoid those things by learning more about my mindset and my mind and what I'm thinking? And that really kind of sparked me into this. Now, in terms of business and leadership, it's always just been a passion of mine. Even while coaching in the NFL, I always was constantly having conversations with business owners and just, how do you run your business? Even with the players, we would always be, if we had guys from the Ivy League or, some guys that were really forward thinking like, hey, I'm not going to be in the NFL forever. What am I going to do next? I loved having conversations with them just to hear what their ideas were, what they wanted to do. So for me, business conversation and leadership has always just been a passion. And now it's just bridging that gap between performance psychology and leadership, because there's tons of parallels. And a lot of it, is the same when you're, feeling stressed, you're feeling tired, you're feeling burnt out is a big word that everyone loves to talk about, right? Burnout. What is burnout? Well, how do athletes prevent burnout? We were just talking about, an Olympic coach, a friend of yours. How do you train for 16 years doing the same thing and not get burnt out? Well, there's a ton of research behind it and we can work through that, So, to me, it's always just been a passion. So I coached for 10 years. And then, it came kind of this decision point where I had to decide, do I stay in coaching or do I pivot and start my own path? And, chose to move back to Boston and be with my wife and start a family and really kind of double down on myself and start, Mroz Leadership Consulting, Mroz Mission, like you said. And it's been awesome. I haven't looked back since. And in a sense, I'm still coaching. I'm passionate. I'm doing what I love to do. But, I'm no longer in that coaching circuit and moving all over the place. I have a home base in Boston and absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's great, man. And I love that, I find so many parallels between business and sports. And it is awesome to see this whole, shift the last couple of years of people getting into, I see a lot of like Ryan Holiday's books, like all his stoicism stuff seems to be circulating around the leagues, right? And then I hate the Eagles, but I forget which one of their receivers, Brown or Smith had
you're a Giants guy?
Yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
Giants, diehard Giants fan.
Bad blood there.
Yeah. But he had that inner excellence book on the sidelines that got caught on camera and all, and that spread. And so I love, and what's also cool about like, major sports and athletes is they have such a spread of awareness on that kind of stuff. Like this dude's reading a book casually on the bench and like a million people bought the book the next day, and think about how many lives are changed and influenced
Mhm.
because of that now. Like that's so cool. And seeing it get more into the kind of, the mass media mainstream culture of like, okay, we got to work on our mindset. And you talked about burnout there, and lately I don't know if it's because I'm entering the age of this happening with a lot of my peers, but a lot of business owners, they're 10 plus years deep in their business and they're feeling burnt out, and they're like, all right, like I have a successful business. Our team is pretty good. Like there's always going to be stuff going on when you run a business, right?
Yeah.
But they're just in general, like I'm burnt out on being a business owner. So like, what do you say to those business leaders that are feeling burnt out? Like, hey, I've been doing this for so long. Like, I don't know if I'm out of gas or I need to change, or what should I be doing here?
Yeah. Whenever I hear an issue or a challenge, an opportunity, I always like to reverse engineer it. So it's like, all right, what is burnout? What does it have? Because might have one person, and everyone loves to talk about Kobe. Let's talk about Kobe. Trains constantly, double, triple what everyone else does. It's like,
Yeah.
well, why didn't he have a burnout? Why? Well, there's some people that can just go, go, go. And the way that I look at burnout and the way I view burnout, it's really when your actions don't align with what you value and what's important to you, right? So that's when you create burnout, because you don't see a connection. You don't see yourself progressing and making movement forward. So, okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to figure out what's important to you. What are your core values? What do you want to live by? What I always like to say is, what do you want to be remembered by? And it's kind of dark when you're not here and people are walking through, your funeral. Like, what do you want them to say about you? How do you want them to remember you, character wise? How do you want them to remember you? Okay, let's identify that. Now we're going to see, how can we now apply this in what you're doing currently? Because no matter what, whether you're owning a business, whether you're retired, whatever you're doing, there's going to be stress in your life. There are going to be hardships. So what we need to do, a lot of people think, burnout, like the load management, right? That's a big term right now, load management. It's like the goal is not to decrease our stressors. The goal is to build a toolbox to endure stressors, because no matter where you are in life, there's always going to be stressors, right? So what we need to do is figure out how to give you the tools to work through it progressively and move forward so that you feel intact with what's important to you. So we take those core values and let's apply it to your business. All right. If you're passionate about this, all right, how can we use humor? How can we use whatever it is, honesty, faith, hope, whatever. Like, all right, let's take these values that are important to you. Now let's apply them to every stressful situation, real life in action, values in action, right? How do we apply them in real time? And to me, that is how I hope I avoid burnout, right? And that's how I like to coach through burnout is, what you're doing doesn't align with currently what's important to you. So let's figure out what's important to you. And now we're going to find that parallel and we're going to run with it and hopefully
Yeah.
avoid losing out on if people have a successful business, it's like, this is everything you've wanted and dreamed of. If it's not, right? If right now you're like, well, this isn't what I dreamed of. This isn't the life I wanted. All right, well, what do you want? What is important? And we try to work through it that way. So always reverse engineer and then find our way back to the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. And in the episode I did with Lisa Carpenter, she brought up that same exact thing around like, reverse engineering how you define success based on your own values, right? Like you start a business maybe because you want freedom or you think it's going to help you make more money, and you put your head down and you work your ass off to make it happen, and you forget to pick your head up and say like, "Oh, I surpassed what I needed, but I'm still grinding and I no longer have those things as my top values," and now needing to kind of redefine your own success based on what you value, and we were talking, off camera before about we both have strong family values where it's like, hey, my day cuts off when I pick up my kids from school because that's it. I'm in dad mode, and those are hard lines that we have. And so knowing that, and for me, that it's an easy decision. If something comes up that's outside of that time, like, I'm sorry, I can't, period. No, that's it. But if I didn't have those hard lines, or I didn't recognize that value and prioritize it for myself, and like I would be, if I was constantly like, okay, maybe I can make it work. And I was like, being too lenient on that and having someone else pick up my kids from school, a couple times a month or something, then you start feeling like, either you recognize that you have the self-awareness of it or not, but like you're not feeling good about it and you're burning out because you're doing things that don't align with the values that you set. But like I can sleep, well, I sleep horribly, but as the saying goes, I can sleep well at night knowing that like I put being a dad as my top priority, and those are easy things for me to make decisions based on.
Hey, working on your sleep will be next episode. All
Yeah,
right. We won't
yeah,
tackle
that's
that right now. We won't dive into that right now. That'll be
yeah,
next episode. We'll get
yeah,
to
but you mentioned stress, and stress always going to be part of any kind of process of growing and building, right? And you have a great video on Instagram about the attitude about stress. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So it's really funny. I'm not sure exactly which video you're talking about, but I do have a separate thought on stress. So you talked about, someone wanting to create a business to have freedom or to have choice, right? And what's
Yep.
really funny, depression rates in retired people like triples the normal population. So sometimes, and this happened with one of the CEOs I work for, they became like bored. And they're
Yeah.
like, I feel like I'm not part of the business anymore. I'm like, well, wait, you created this leadership structure so that you would have autonomy and choice. So it's almost like diving back into a gratitude and almost being like, look what you've created. Let's be thankful for this time. Now, what else do you want? Where else do you want to put your time? Where else do you want to put your focus? Because what happens is when we have that freedom and we have that choice and autonomy, a lot of times we can almost forget this is what we've been working towards. Now, okay, you're bored. Let's create some more stress for you, right? Because stress, honestly, is part of our life. Like that's part of our juice that keeps us going.
And you
When we
can't
have
grow without stress, right? That's how muscles are created, right?
you literally stress builds you stronger. And if you eliminate stress, what happens is you there's really no like neutral. There's no maintenance. You're either growing or you're declining. And if you eliminate all your stress, because that's what and it's what we're taught. Stress is bad for you. You have to eliminate stress. What happens when you eliminate stress, you actually feel worse because stress doesn't go anywhere. So if you're like, I've done all this to eliminate my stress, why am I still stressed? It actually makes you feel worse about yourself because you're like, I'm not even good at eliminating stress. But in reality, we don't want to eliminate it. We want to embrace it and change our attitude around it and then see how we can, overcome it, how it's going to make us stronger and better. So stress is, man, it is such an interesting dynamic because we're taught so much about how stress kills cortisol and this and that. And it's like, but we don't look at the other side either about how we learn from stress and how all these
Yeah.
hormones actually make you learn better. You remember, you recall things, you become stronger. I think stress is like water for life. And if you do not have stress in your life, you're not going to be fulfilled. You're going to be searching for answers because you're going to be bored, right? And I'm not saying everyone should go out there and get as stressed out as possible. Like, that's not the thing, but we have to be taking action and moving forward. And that's what keeps us engaged and happy. Like we're succeeding, right? We're overcoming obstacles. And if we have that mindset about eliminating stress, we're going to be very upset because you can't eliminate it. It's not going anywhere. So, we have to use it as a tool for us.
Yeah. And I think once you can recognize things and relabel them in your subconscious, right? That makes a huge difference in like, you can be stressed and still be growing and not feel bad about it. And so once you label stress as I'm growing and this is a good thing, you can stop feeling bad about the stress that you're experiencing and start labeling it as, I think it was a Jocko Willing quote. It was like, when, you're doing 100 push-ups and you start to feel tired, you don't, if you change it, instead of saying, I feel tired, you say, I'm getting stronger, and just reframing it to like, oh, if I stop now, I don't get stronger because I'm not building the muscle through stress. But if I reframe that as like, oh, here's the part where I actually make myself stronger by continuing with this, you can feel, feel better about the stresses that you have.
Yeah. And it's not easy.
Yeah, no.
Not easy to do.
No.
Like we're talking about it like it's super simple. It's not. I mean, when I get in stressful situations, there's times where my wife wants to kill me, right? Because she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're so impatient with this and that." Like, it's a dance, right? And you're trying to work through it. But being aware of it, I think, is the most important thing. And being aware, a very good friend of mine, told me the first thing he does when he wakes up in the morning is he just listens to the voice in his head. Like, what's the tone? What's the energy? And just listen to it to notice it. And then once you're aware and you notice it, then you can start directing it and leading that voice in your head. I always tell everyone, like, we have a choice. You can listen or you can lead. And what we need to do is we need to make sure we're leading ourselves, leading your own voice in your head. And that moment right when your alarm goes off, it's so interesting because usually there's not much else going on except for your thoughts. And it's like, what are you saying right there? What are you doing? What are you saying to yourself? What's the energy you're bringing to the day? So I like to do that too. Just listen, like, what am I saying to myself before anything else? And it's cool. Once you become more aware of that, then it becomes easier when you're in those situations. So that first step is just self-awareness.
Yeah.
How do I speak to myself? What do I do in certain situations? That's step number one before anything else. I
Yeah.
think.
The power of self-talk is phenomenal. And I actually trained myself. It took months of doing this where now almost every day when my alarm goes off, my inside my brain, my first thoughts are thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
And then I go right into like probably like 2 or 3 minutes of just like things that I'm grateful for in my life. Even starting off with like, I'm grateful for being in this comfortable bed right now. Like, and then like, my life and my kids and my wife and my business and my clients and all those things.
You're like, man, why
But
did I make this bed so comfortable?
yeah.
Why is this room the perfect temperature?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, and that's been like a really cool practical exercise that I did a couple years ago, working with somebody on like exactly what you talked about, like the first thoughts that you have, and being able to just like wake up and I just like force repeat like thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I don't let anything else into my head. I'd like that's just on repeat until I like you know can take a breath and be in control of the thoughts before like you said, instead of listening, leading. And that's been like a cool little exercise that I have. But I want to go back before we talked about like creating autonomy, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, we create a business because we want the freedom and autonomy, and then you get into this world of growing a business, and every business coach and consultant that says you got to work on your business, not in your business. And so let's just take like if you're a plumber and I don't know anyone who specifically loves plumbing, but you're a plumber and you're going to people's houses and you're fixing the pipes, right? And you just love fixing pipes, but you're like, I need to grow the business because this is a company. And so you start learning how to, bank some money, hire your first employee. Then you start having maybe you have a couple trucks and you have a bunch of employees out on the road. And now you're an office. Now you have an office job. And it's like, well, I'm a plumber and I love plumbing. Now I have this office job as an owner. And I think, and a conversation I had with Ron Sell in another episode was similar to this, where he talked about you can get to a point where you can own the business and then also work in it. Like now that you've created so much autonomy and freedom, go back and get a job. Like if you have the time, right? And so in his example, he's owned several martial arts schools and a martial arts software company. Um, and he loved teaching the 3 and 4 year old classes. And so he started the school, hustle and grind, all that kind of stuff, built it up, had his teachers and everything, and he wasn't in the business and he had lost part of the joy because he loved teaching martial arts.
Mhm.
And so he took back the 3 and 4 year old classes once a week or however often it was. And so, he had created enough freedom and autonomy in his life by being a successful business owner. We're like, hey, I can get back into this business and I can do the work that I'm actually passionate and love and still be the owner. And so that it's a little contradictory to the common business advice of like, you have to work yourself out of the business so that you can just be an owner. And it's like, well, if we got into it because it's stuff that we love, like, let's make sure we're still doing the stuff that we love.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, I look at it like you're blessed to have that choice.
Totally.
You can jump in back into the classes if you want, right? If you've
Right.
created such a structure, and that's usually the goal, is to help build this structure. And if
Hmm.
you've built something that is running and creating business and generating business and operating on its own, you're blessed to have the choice. Do you want to get back in? Do you want to start another project? Like, what do you want to do? And,
Right.
and sometimes that's the hardest question. Um, so, having that choice though, you're extremely lucky to have that choice because a lot of
Totally.
people don't. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a shift in identity too, right? Like if you consider yourself a plumber or a martial arts teacher or whatever kind of business owner, and then you become a business owner, and then you get to this place where you're like you said, there's a lack of fulfillment because in the retirement case, it's because they're retired and done. But sometimes even as a business owner, where you're not needed in the business anymore, and
Mhm.
so you feel you're lacking the fulfillment that was needed when you were needed in the business, and you've done a successful job of not being needed anymore. That you have to, you're like, oh, do I leave? Do I sell this company now because I don't love it anymore? Do I keep it and I just go do something else while it's managing itself? or do you reinsert yourself back into business? And I think it goes back to what you said before about the values and alignment. And it's like, that's where it's time to check yourself again and have that self-awareness around, all right, what are my values and what do I want out of life now? Like, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up before, but now that I've done it, what do I want to be when I grow up some more?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
And
then doing those things.
I think something that's really important, our values do change, right? What's important to you can evolve and change. And I think that's important to recognize, because sometimes someone might have these values and they're just so set on it. And that's great. Other people, maybe they don't. And listen, if you're the same person you were 10 years ago, there's probably something wrong, right?
Yeah.
You grow and evolve and change. So as you grow, what's important, your values, and even your key characteristics that you want to be described, like that stuff may evolve.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to recognize and give yourself that freedom to, again, choose, all right, how do I, what is important, and recognize it's okay to pivot a little.
Yeah. And, there's, I see quotes like this float around that I love, but when you decide what your values are and what type of person you want to be, that's when the universe is going to give you the opportunities to make the decision to be that person.
Mhm.
Right. Like, I think, the common one is like, if you say you want to be a patient person, the universe is going to give you opportunities to test your patience, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's how it works. And so same thing, like we talked about, like, if you want to be a great dad, that doesn't come on the days where your kids are easygoing and, following along with whatever's got to get done. It's like the moments when they're cranky and fighting you on stuff, are you going to erupt on them and go nuts? Or are you going to, respond accordingly, like the dad that you want to be would do? And so that's kind of a trigger in my head, where when my kids are being difficult, the trigger in my head has now turned into, hey, this is your chance to be a great dad, right?
Mhm.
It's easy to be a great dad when your kids like, ate all their dinner and then ask for dessert. You're like, yeah, you ate all your dinner, you can have dessert. It's hard when they don't want to eat dinner and want dessert and then melt on the floor and,
Yeah.
are crying for 10 minutes and you can't give in on it. And so it's like,
I'll tell you what, I would beg for 10 minutes. I would love 10 minutes. If it stopped at 10 minutes, I'd be thankful.
yeah, exactly. But it's like, those are the moments that, hey, this is, I'm not tired, I'm getting stronger, right? Like, this is the opportunity to be a great dad or a great coach or a great business owner, right? Like, it's easy to be a great business owner and a leader in your business when there's plenty of profit, no clients are complaining and the team is all getting along. It's like, but if you say you want to be a great leader and a great people person and manage a great business, it's like, well, that means there's going to be the hard days, and how you respond on those hard days to the tough situations is what dictates how you're going to be remembered in those characteristics at your funeral, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it all starts with that self-awareness, because you want to be a great dad, but if you're not even aware of what's going on in your head, or you're not aware that you're getting frustrated, you can't
Yeah.
possibly tell yourself, hey, now's an opportunity to be a great dad, right? So it comes with that self-awareness, and really it comes from making mistakes. I know, like, people are always like, oh, fail forward and fail this and that, and like failure, failure, failure. I'm not a big failure guy. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to fail. I don't seek out failure.
Yes.
In those moments though, when you're trying to improve, you'll learn about yourself and catch yourself in those moments when you were frustrated or when you felt yourself being short. That's an opportunity. Next time I get there, I have to remind myself about that. So to me, that's really learning from failure.
Right.
But
Dude, I love
also-
that you brought that up. And I think that, like, had become such a thing where people were afraid to fail or whatever, that it's the pendulum swung in the opposite direction, where now everything is fail fast, fail first, fail,
Yeah.
fail, 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 fail. You should want to fail. And it's like, can we pump the brakes? We don't want to fail, but you need to accept that failure is a part of the journey.
Yeah.
And not to be afraid of it or try to avoid it, because like you just said, that's where you can, get awareness. It's where you learn how to get better, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, the idea is not to fail. The idea is to keep getting better, and you're going to fail along the way. So that's okay. If you're afraid of failure, you never take the steps and the action necessary.
Yeah. And we always
but-
have choices, right? In any path, you have choices. There's a chance you're making all the right choices and you're doing well and you're not failing. Like, that's not a bad thing. If you're doing well and you're succeeding and you're progressing in the path you want, well, guess what? Maybe you sought good counsel, you have good mentors, and you're making right decisions. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. You don't,
right.
failure is not a sign of success. To me, how you respond from failure will help you grow and learn. But it's okay to not fail. It's okay. Now, that doesn't mean, like, don't take risks and don't do. I agree with all that.
Yeah.
sometimes everyone's like, oh, I should be failing. I'm like, well, no, you might just be making good decisions. And maybe you sought counsel that
Right.
is really benefiting you and you're learning from other people. And that's a
Yeah.
way to be successful too. You don't have to fail.
Yeah. And like a lot of people will say, well, like, you learn a lot more from your failures than successes. It's like, well, that's because there was a lot more to learn if you didn't succeed. But
Mhm.
also it's because it's what kind of mindset you have after you win. Because if you lose, you say, most of the time when you lose or you fail, you say, what went wrong and what can I learn so I can succeed next time? Well, if you succeed, you should have that same level of reflection
Mhm.
and still look back to, okay, what did we do well? What worked well? Let's make sure we continue doing that. How do we make it better? Where did we miss that we could do better next time? Like, it's the level of reflection that makes a difference after the fact. It's not the fact that you failed and you are going to learn more. It's like you should you should always be reflecting and getting better, whether you fail or not. And I think it's just more people tend to do that when they fail.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You win. They say, what is this? You win. You learn if you fail, or learn if you
Yeah, yeah,
lose, or whatever. I don't know the exact
yeah,
saying, but it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
no. If you win, you learn. If you lose, you learn. You have to keep learning, no matter what. You have to
Right.
learn from everything.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah,
You
no,
you
it's you win or you learn. That's what it is. Win or learn. And I'm like,
Right.
well,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
you
yeah.
learn and
You
you
can
learn.
win
You
and
have to learn.
learn.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, so you talked a lot about self-awareness for leaders. Like, what kind of, practical tips do you have for people who need to get more self-aware? Like, how do you coach people through that? What can they do to become more self-aware?
That's a great question. So self awareness really has two parts, right? The first part, it kind of self-explanatory, right? Self-awareness. Okay, what's important to me? What do I value? What are my goals? What are challenges? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And I always like to ask the question, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Right? If you could change one thing, and it really makes you think about, well, change what? About yourself, about your environment, about your schedule, about your work, anything. What do you want to change right now? That's the first aspect of it, is really learning about yourself. What's important to you? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? What are your habits? What are your routines? All that. The second piece is, how do you impact others? Because really, and that's the part that people forget about. Self-awareness is understanding how you impact the people around you. How does your energy impact them? What are you saying to them? So the only way to truly learn that is by seeking feedback, asking for feedback, learning about yourself, learning about how people view you. And it's difficult, right? Because not all feedback is created equal. You know,
Hmm.
if, let's just say, you own a business and you're asking frontline employees what's their view of you, well, they don't work with you all day every day. They only hear bits and pieces, and they might not necessarily know everything. So they might have a certain perspective on you, and you'll get a certain type of feedback. Then you could ask, an investor who you talk to quarterly, maybe, and give updates. They might have a certain perspective on you. Then if you ask, the person who's sitting next to you in the room every single day, every meeting, every morning, they see you come in, and now that person's also going to have a different perspective. The best perspective, obviously, is the people who are around you the most. I'm not saying ignore those, because you still want to learn what everyone else is saying, but you just have to weigh it differently. And you have to understand, well, this person might not know everything. And because you could get great feedback, right? But you're like, well, this person, all they see is an email that I send out to the whole company when we're making changes. They don't really
Yeah.
know anything about me. Or they could give negative feedback, and it's the same. All right, it's negative. Why? What am I doing that's putting this out? Then the person next to you, who's with you day in and day out, who might know the most, there's a few different categories within that feedback. All right, you might have someone who's an unloving critic. Now, this person is, no matter what you do, they're going to find something wrong, and they're going to give you critical feedback. Then you have an uncritical lover, right? Now, this is someone who I would always like to say, like my mom, or, someone who just sees you, like, no matter what you do, there's no wrong. You can't mess up. If you make a mistake, they're going to find a reason how someone else, it's their fault, not your fault. And that feedback you also have to take with a grain of salt, right? Because they might not be seeing the whole picture. Then you have this beautiful enemy. And this is the best type of feedback. This is someone who has your back, is around you enough, knows you well enough, knows your habits, all that, but also still wants you to improve and get better. So when you're seeking feedback, they're going to be honest and direct with you, but in a way that they're trying to help you. They're trying to get you better. Because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to hear critical feedback on yourself. It's difficult to hear when your intentions probably aren't that, right? I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I didn't want to come across that way. But that's where we start to really learn about ourselves. Like, all right, well, what did I do in that moment that made my son intimidated? Right. And that's not the type of leadership that I want in my household. So it's just interesting to seek feedback. And I feel like that's how you get that you really can get a grasp of that self-awareness through seeking feedback.
I think that's also the power of working with a coach. Is this is maybe the power of working with a coach, but also the power of how you set your culture for your company, where you don't want yes men who are just going to say yes, make you feel good about everything you're doing, no matter what. But also, you don't want to have a culture where people are afraid to hold you accountable to the standards that you want to set for yourself. And I think a lot of times, especially in business with a business owner, they can maybe get too lenient or drift off course from their own standards, and no one's going to tell them and hold them to it. Right. Because they're afraid they're going to get fired or whatever reason, like they're just not comfortable because that's not the relationship they have, because this person is sitting, on a pedestal in the company. And so coaches can come in and be that person who holds you to the standard that you say you want for yourself and hold you accountable to that and have those kind of conversations. Plus coaches, like yourself, you're trained to have those conversations in a way that doesn't make them feel bad, but helps them realize like, oh yeah, I did say that's what I wanted. And this is what it's supposed to look like. And thank you for reminding me that I'm not living up and acting in accordance with the values and standards that I said I want to hold for myself. And having that outside person to be able to hold the line for you is super important.
And sometimes really it's just shining a flashlight on it, right? Like we have our certain focus and we can focus on certain things and like, well, hey, let's just put a flashlight on this real quick. And what I love to do is, you gather that feedback from, let's just say we're working with you. We're going to have you rate yourself on all these different aspects, qualities of leadership. Then we're going to interview the people around you. And then we're going to put it into a visual and see like, where's the separation between what you think and what everyone else thinks? Yeah. Is there separation? Like maybe there's no separation. Maybe you have really good self-awareness. Is there separation? And then if there is separation, is that something you want to correct or not? Just again, shining a flashlight and asking the question, well, what's important? Is this important? If it is, all right, let's act on it. If it's not important, all right, let's take that flashlight and move somewhere else. But it's really just creating that awareness and asking the questions and helping, drive direction.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminded me of a saying that I heard recently is like, let the fires burn. And so if you shine the light on something and you're like, not every problem deserves the energy of being solved. Right. And so there's some things that if they don't matter, like, oh, that's something, this is, a quote unquote problem in the system or in the structure of the business. It's like, but it doesn't really affect anybody. It doesn't move us toward our goal. If we fix it, it's not moving us away from our goal. It's like, it's just like something that happened. We don't need to really waste the time and energy fixing something that doesn't matter. And,
it's hard to identify.
That you have I was going to say to identify those things, but, and especially as entrepreneurs, because typically we have problem solver identity, right? Like that's why you start a business, because you're solving problems for people. And so every problem, big or small, you want to solve it, and being able to recognize like, oh, we need this. We can't shine the flashlight in two places at once. So we need to just let that fire burn, and we need to work over here because this is the thing that's going to really move the needle for us.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple things that you work with people on is the team dynamics and culture. So, we've talked a lot about the self-leadership and for the business owners themselves, but how do you help them create the kind of culture that they want to set so their values are kind of instilled in the team as well and all that kind of stuff? And that's a huge thing with sports teams, right? Is having clear, clarity around values and directions.
Yeah. The biggest thing, so team cohesion is so fluid, right? It's constantly ebbing, evolving as people get to know each other or whatever. So the first part is like, all right, how do we create team cohesion? How do we build a team first? And the first thing is really, going through shared experiences, working hard together. And I always, during COVID, right, this is now 5 years ago, some of those businesses I'm working with, I'm like, you guys are going to look back on this. And this is going to be a moment where it's like, we pulled together, like, this is how we come out of this. We're going to look back and laugh at this and be like, wow, So those stressful times, all of a sudden you change your mindset on it and they become this building block and this part of your foundation of your team. And we built the best communication through the most difficult times. And now communication is one of our core values, honesty, right? Being direct and being prompt, right? These are our core values. This is what's important to us. So now that we have core values, it's like, okay, We're building a team. We're going through shared experiences together. We're learning and growing together. Now we can have this similar communication in language. We speak together. We talk together. We talk through problems. Those are kind of the foundations of building a team. Shared experiences and growing together, right? Evolving, moving forward together and creating that same language you speak. Now, as again, it ebbs and flows, there's going to be times when communication breaks down. People grow, people change. We want to make sure that we're growing together as a group. So how do we do that? All right, we need to figure out what we need to measure, and we need to make sure that we're measuring it publicly and together. And that's going to help drive this team. How do we measure? Let's just say responsiveness is a value of ours. We want to be responsive. Always want to be available and responsive. How do we measure that? All right. We need to measure that and track it. That's something that's important to us. And now, as long as we keep those core values visual in front of us, talking about it, something that's important, that's going to help really keep that team together. And again, measuring it. And you as a leader, you have to exemplify. If you're not responsive, but responsive is one of your core values, is your team going to respect the core value of responsiveness? If they reach out to you and they don't hear back for 3 days, probably not. They were like, oh, he's not responsive to me. So yeah, our core values outwardly, right? We want our customers and clients to see these core values. This is how we want to be remembered and known by. It also has to be internal too, because if it's not internal, they're not going to respect that. And all of a sudden it's going to start to just splinter the team apart. So to me, the core values and really measuring it and making sure it's part of who you are, the foundation, is probably one of the most important ways of just creating that team cohesion and building a team together.
Yeah, you touched on something that I've, through experience, realized is so powerful, and it's shared language.
Mm.
And that's something that not a lot of people talk about. And I experienced it. I was advising a company a few years ago, and they were starting to have a toxic culture spreading throughout the team, and they really needed to kind of, weed the garden and get the bad people out and get more good people in. And when that was going on, one of the things that ended up strengthening the core people who stayed through that and then, are still there years later was this random inside joke that started. And it became something that, it popped up one time. You know how inside jokes are. It's like stupid to anybody on the outside. And it came up and it was dumb. And then it got referenced again like a couple days later. And then it became something where it was like, hey, whenever we have meetings with people outside the company, let's see how many times you can mention that.
Yeah.
Without them noticing, right? And like, it was obviously not anything like harmful or mean or anything. It was just stupid random inside joke. And so that became a running thing for months that like tied everybody together, as dumb as it sounded.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm like, we were having an executive meeting and I'm like, guys, I know this sounds stupid. I'm like, but I think this cheeseburger thing might have been part of the turnaround here.
What it is it's a shared experience.
Yeah.
Right? That's a shared experience that's exclusive to this team, and it pulls us together. That's a shared experience. And no, it's awesome. And a lot of people will try to put like cocktail hours, or they want to do a team dinner. And a lot of times it's like, listen, I'm with you all day. I want to go see my family. I don't need a cocktail hour. Like the team building and we're going to go throw axes. It's like, I don't want to throw an axe. I want to go, I want to go to my son's soccer game. So sometimes we overthink what a team needs. And it could just be an inside joke about a cheeseburger, but it's a shared experience. It's going to make us laugh and it's going to pull us together because we know we're in this thing together. Right. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's a perfect example. A lot of times companies will try to create these team building events. And in reality, everyone's like, this is great and it could be fun, but really I just, I'm here I'm here all day.
And ultimately those things, even if everybody's like, oh, that was a great time, remember the axe throwing thing? It's like, but it didn't, but the purpose of it, of building like the actual chemistry between the team, that, it may not have been there. It just was like a fun experience that day.
Yeah. You want to create that shared experience that continues on,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's awesome.
Exactly.
That's really good.
Yeah, dude, so much gold in this. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your genius. Let everybody know where they can catch up with you and how to connect with you if they want to bring this, this mindset stuff that you bring into their company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So on Instagram at Jamey Mroz, Jamey, spelled a little bit differently, Mroz, right? Jamey Mroz. Same on LinkedIn, and then online it's at MrozMission.com. So MrozMission.com. And we're Mroz Leadership Consulting. We're here to help with all your leadership development needs. And That's really it. We love the team camaraderie, the team building, and really developing the structure. I like this. We want to help you build a team that creates your dreams, right? It's like, what does the leader want? That's what we're here to help do. We're here to get you to that point where you have that choice of, what am I going to do with my time, right? This is what I want. Or if you want to be in the business, like, all right, let's create a system. Let's create leaders in your company to empower you to have that choice. That's our goal.
Yeah, I love that, man. Thank you so much. And guys, if today's conversation gave you something valuable, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you want more leadership insights like this, head over to thegrowthsuite.com/leader for additional resources. Jamey, thank you so much. Guys, make sure you're following him on Instagram and check out his website if you want to learn more. And make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future insights that will help you make better decisions and grow as a leader. I'm Todd Genatasio. Until next time, think clearly, make educated decisions, and lead with confidence.